Alright guys, welcome back again to this exciting trial of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles 2. Let me tell you right now, as of this video, I finished part 2 of the trial, and I gotta say the twist that occurred near the end itself, was just... wow, it's something guys. So without spoiling it, I'm just gonna get right into it for you. So if anything else, let's get right into it, and thank you all for watching. Let's get to it. Alright guys, welcome back again. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case, so I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45, so I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later. So that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight up into the trap. Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. I didn't notice that it had fallen off his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sort of details of what I did. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. An exchange of assassins? What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Seishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. Man, the dogs are loud. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Oh, wonderful! Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes. Thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries as a prosecutor. As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel? The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, Barak Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seishiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku, who was pulling the strings. The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barak Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt. Wow. Beyond all reasonable doubt. What? Order! 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 The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say, I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will, on this occasion, grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Oh, here we go again. Oh man. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verified this vile and unremitting accusation. Hasn't soured the content of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Zeeks! I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now. And ever since that time, I've endured the weight of the implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then I let justice decide, Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. And as a lawyer, and as his friend, then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well, defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. As you wish, my lord. Here we go. The Reaper and the assassin exchange. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution? Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the assassin exchange? I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within the man's testimony. Alright, here we go. I've never taken the life of I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Hold on a second. Might be something. If I remember, I gotta see if I have it. It's the Clint's autopsy report, I believe. Yep. And Zeke's 31st of May between 9 p.m. and midnight. Death from a single stab wound into the heart. Other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Additional notes: recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring finger of the right hand, but no documented corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. Okay, yep. Objection! What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see. The defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again. The professor. I personally researched all of the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls, and for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zeeks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead, Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible in the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asugi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key indicating the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zeeks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of the evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death. That's outrageous! And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Order! Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, another waste of a chalice. He who falls to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seshiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asugi's young lad, are you? And what, you're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zeke's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barrick Van Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly, and as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ah! So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barrick Van Zeeks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asugi. What? What you just told the court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for the trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears, his shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? Lord Van Zeeks? I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You? I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... Oh, I know who it is. Let's go. I was waiting.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Miles Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zeeks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seshiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zeek's autopsy? That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say... I forget how the system works in your little backwater country, but in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Ah! Order! Order in court! following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well. There's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeek's autopsy. There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Sith won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection!
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous, there's no one left. Who? Yonosuke, who? Tell me! Kazuma, please. This trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks is... Yujin Mikotoba. Let's rock it.
Take that!
Heaven help us, another Japanese? An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Yujin Mikotoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Seshiro Jigoku and Genshin Asugi as a visiting student. And what could this testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asugi, let me refresh your memory as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need this witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asugi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by a Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seshiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asugi, you will be reprimanded for following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asugi. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is... Ooh. Oh, nice. Mr. Sholmes? This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Sashiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Miles Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the prevarications of your superiors? Order! Order in court! It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence! He's right. The judge is absolute. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present can honestly say it doesn't... cut out. What's... The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right. We need to clear this up before that young Japanese fellow is remanded in custody. My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself of this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting at the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo? Ah, yes. I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ear is at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart, he's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Woo, that was exciting, guys. To be continued. Alright, as you know, I'm going to have to end the video here for today, everyone. Thank you all for watching. We will reconvene in the next one.